this just yet.
Why run? What's the point? Everlasting fire.
Welcome back, you filthy exiles. So, today is my last day of leave, and I thought I would go out with a bang before I get back to work, and basically put up a video for the build I've been working on for the last few days, and min-maxing and getting it up to Sirus A9, as you would have seen in the footage at the start of the very beginning of the video. This is the OG max, true max block. And I won't get this confused with what we generally have as Glancing Blows max block. No, this is actual max block, or as close to max block as we can get it, to 71%. I think up to like 72%. Give or take a bit of min-maxing, it'll go to 74%. But this is the most truest version of max block that you can play in this day and age for the OG sort of max block Gladiator. And the reason being is in past leagues we used to have this Violent Retaliation node, which used to give us max block, or you know, even reigning veteran used to give us spell block equal to our attack block, but that's actually not a thing anymore, so we have to work around that to make this work. Unfortunately, due to all of us abusing max block mechanics last league, GGG changed this on us in 3.16. But it is possible to get max block, and it is actually possible to get good DPS. So right now this build is clocking in at about 1.263 mil DPS. That's bleed dot. If you go all awakened jewels with some investment, you can easily get this up to 1.4 mil, and then if you want to trade off some survivability from health and things like that, you can get it to about 1.8 mil dot, which is pretty bloody powerful. That's a lot of dot. As you would have seen, it chews through, even at, I think this is a level 92 tree. I'm running a level 88 build, and taking down Sirus A9 was pretty easy. Could tank hits, could block hits, which is good. And yeah, so anyway, let's talk about how this build ticks. And by the way, this is Sirus DPS, so we've got Sirus ticked on here, and nothing else crazy here. Everything that is applicable to this build that you could see in the video is exactly the way that it is, but I'll talk through this very shortly. So anyway, that's what we're playing. We're playing OG Lacerate, and obviously the trade here is we switch between Blood and Sand Stance. For bossing, we use our Blood Stance, and for clearing on maps, we use our Sand Stance. Now, clear speed, absolutely amazing. Just bashes through maps like they're nothing. Survivability-wise, cannot handle 10 boss Maven encounters, but if it fights a single strong boss, it can boss pretty damn proficiently. In fact, it's pretty damn good at taking bosses down just by sheer attack speed and bleed dot and everything else in between. It does exceptionally well. Things like dot are a bit of a wild card on this one. So for example, this doesn't have corrupted blood on the tree, but I'll show you how we get around corrupted blood and how we deal with that. There's a lot of different defensive layering that is built into this build. Now, there are two ways that you can achieve this max block sort of approach. The way that I've went is true block. There is a spell suppression version though that you can play, and basically you build up into where is it? Magebane, and then convert all your decks to spell suppression. And what spell suppression does is it suppresses spell damage by 50%. The problem that I see with this, and you can get this up to like 90%, 90-something% spell suppression, basically do convert all spell damage to 50% of that damage is taken. The problem with doing that though is it's not really max block, and you're still going to pay, you know, for the damage that you're taking, and we already don't have a life pool beyond 5k HP, so that's a bit of a problem. So my route is a lot more tedious, and it's a lot more difficult to achieve, but it is achievable, and there's a few ways that we have to, or a few routes that we have to go to get it to work, and it's mainly around the type of gear that we're using, and I'll explain that in the next bit. Okay, so gearing. Gearing is the most important part of getting this build to work, and it's very specific to how you need to gear, and we're going to talk through that right now. So first of all, this uses the Jack axe. Now, one of the best things about this axe is while you play it, I noticed that it actually talks, and in the game, literally no joke, it says shit while you're in the game, like feed me more blood, rah rah rah. It's actually a really good axe, I really like it, but the biggest advantage here is it grants level 20 Thirst for Blood. Now what Thirst for Blood is it's actually a health reserved aura, if you want to call it that. In my case 8.62%, and you regenerate 400 life per second for each enemy affected by Thirst for Blood, and this occurs when you hit enemies and they start bleeding. And you also get 20% more damage with bleeding. Not to mention the damage over time on this axe is really good, and the flat damage is really good as well. Now, I just happened to get lucky and got a corruption roll with melee hits have 15% chance to fortify. If you can do that, great. If you can't, then just the standard Jack axe is fine. You're just going to have to run without fortification, but there's no problem there. Shield-wise, we're using the Surrender. I got a Krangle roll for cold resist, so that helps me get to maximum resistances. Bam. But just overall, one of the best shields in the game. 250 life when you block. This is max block, so you're always going to be getting 250 life back. 1500 armor if you've blocked recently. And level 30 Reckoning, which means we have a Reckoning proc. So we buff up Reckoning with life gain on hit, melee physical damage, and Pulverize, which all do about 200,000 bleed dot just off the shield. So even if enemies are hitting you, they'll still die to dot, which is really good. 200k is nothing to scoff at when you're mapping in particular. Next is the helm. So it's very specific. We have to have an Elder helm, and we have to have a 6% chance to spell block crafted into the suffix or on the suffix of that helm. If you don't have it, you won't be able to achieve the intended outcome with block. Now in my case, I've got a bit of rarity, shitload of HP, some cold resist because cold resist was a problem, it no longer is, and also intelligence because this character's a little bit dumb. So we had to put intelligence on our build. Same with the chest piece. So you can get 8% spell damage block roll, and this is a crafted roll as well, so by doing the syndicate missions you unlock this. In my case, I got 159 HP, some ore resist because this is an astral plate, regeneration, and then yeah, 7% chance to block spell damage. These are two of the ways that we get our spell block up without having to run versatile. It just the axe just spoke. Without running Versatile Combatant. So the problem with running Versatile Combatant is it solves a lot of the problems, however you only have 50% chance to block, and this build relies on true block. So yeah. Alright, so pretty much Amulet, Strength and Dex roll. I got a shitload of Dex, damage over time on this Amulet as well. And then Mana Leech. Mana Leech is a bit of a problem, so that's what I have on this build, and physical damage to attacks and flat HP. Now we use Safeguard as the Anoint, and this is to increase our block chance again, our spell block chance by another 6%. Safeguard is this node up here in the more Templar Elementalist tree sort of area. So that's basically required, and this also gives you good amounts of dots, so you can do a lot more damage with your bleed. My dots are T2 roll, but you know, you probably get a better roll, but obviously more currency. And I think price-wise, this isn't an overly expensive Actually, nothing on this build is overly expensive, to be honest with you. Rings. So the rings are a little bit choppy on expense-wise, but basically tackling all resists, even chaos resist. I think I paid like 2x per each of these Vermilion rings, and this is to push the health pool up as well. Same with the other ring, just all resist physical damage to attacks where you can. If you can get dot, but if you can't get dot, don't stress about it, don't get dot. Pretty straightforward stuff. Now, gauntlets, you're not necessarily going to get a set of the Hands of the High Templar straight away, but I managed to have a set drop, and I managed to get a vulnerability on hit with 48% increased effect corrupt onto my gloves, so that's what I'm using. But you can use any old gloves, even if you have like color melee gloves, anything like that, that'll all work. Belt, we're using a corrupted Reslyther's Coil with a 6% maximum life corrupt, and I know, yes, that's expensive or rare to get. It is, but actually this belt isn't too expensive. It's the corruption itself is hard to get, but this league these were pretty inexpensive belts because melee is basically bricked outside of a few builds. So you can just buy a shitload of Reslythers and just corrupt and chance it until you get it, or you don't need it, but it's a nice to have on the build. Now the boots. The boots were about 4 to 5x. The reason why is we have 30% movement speed, we have some spell suppression, we have 84 to life, we also have 41% chance to avoid bleeding, we have 49% chance to avoid being poisoned, and we have bleed you inflict deals damage 12% faster, which is really important for this build. And I cannot be frozen, which is the which is actually a craft that I have on my bench. You don't need these boots, but they are a huge quality of life. If there's one thing that you get on the boots, bleeding you inflict deals more damage, and life and movement speed. The other stuff is just nice to have. I've managed to find these, someone was selling them, and then I had a spare craft on there, so I put a master crafted prefix modifier on there, which was 1x. Flasking, get a corrupted blood or bleed immunity life flask, just for good measure. Get a Rumi's concoction, and then all these are auto-triggered too, so have used when charges reach full. Now the Rumi's concoction is going to get you as close to max block as you possibly can, so we do rely on that flask. Another Quicksilver flask, as always. You don't need a chill or freeze duration roll on it because we're immune to that and we can't be frozen. Also, I have a silver flask with Onslaught that gives me 10% increased attack speed, and when I get hit, I generate charges, which is basically how you want to have your rest of your crafts, or rest of your flask crafted. And then I have a sulfur flask here that also that removes ignite, because ailments are a little bit of a problem. If I could get one that removed shock, I would, and also one that removed poisoning, I would, but I haven't done that because I'm a little bit lazy. That's pretty much it for the gearing component. Like, it is a little bit tedious to get this gear. And I'm not going to lie, it's annoying now that we have to get max spell block this way through both the helmet and the armor. But that being said, you can get some decent pieces of armor. It's really like, how much currency do you have to throw at this build? I think this armor was like dirt cheap. This armor was like 1 or 2x tops. The helm was like, it was like 30 chaos. Rings would unfortunately 2x each just because of Vermilion rings, but if you don't go Vermilion rings, you could use something else like a coral ring with the same rolls. Amulet, dirt cheap. I think surrenders are what, 1 exalt this league. The jack is like, why is that 1 exalt? The jack itself is generally like less than 10 chaos. It's a really common sort of Val hatchet. And then Reslythers were cheap this league as well. But anyway, let's get into the tree. Oh, by the way, the Pantheons that you'll run will be Soul of Solaris, which I haven't leveled up yet, and Soul of Tukahama, and this is for the life regen and also for taking down bosses 1-to-1. This is why this does so well, taking down shit like Sirus A9. Okay, so just moving on from gearing, dual setups. So in our helm, we're going to have Leap Slam, Life Tap, Faster Attacks, Ancestral Protector. Ancestral Protector just means we can get our attacks up, which means we can proc 8 stacks of bleed a lot quicker. In our axe, we're going to have an enlightened jewel. I've just got a level 3. I know they're expensive. If you can't afford it, don't worry about it. You'll just have to remove War Banner out of the build. Tempest Shield is incredibly important. This is going to get your spell block up. And then Divergent Pride, but if you can't get Divergent Pride, normal Pride is fine. The only reason why I'm running Divergent Pride is I had it spare, and it's negative percentage to physical damage reduction for enemies in the vicinity, so it means you do more physical damage to enemies. This version is a lot more expensive, so if it's just normal Pride, that's fine. In our shield, we're going to by default have level 30 Reckoning, so we want to buff that up and use merely physical damage, life gain on hit, and Pulverize. In our chest, we're going to be running Lacerate, a level 21 Lacerate, Brutality, and this build, I only have one Awakened Jewel, or one Awakened Gem in this build, and the reason why is because it's just not feasible to get the other jewels or gems without great cost. So we do run Chance to Bleed, we do run Multi-Strike support. I'm not going to put an Awakened Multi-Strike in there. You could get it up to like 1.6, 1.8 million damage with Awakened Multi-Strike and things like that, but that's like a 40x jewel, or is it 40x? Yeah. So we're not going to do that. Right now it's just a 20 and 20 Multi-Strike jewel. Merely physical damage support, and I do have an Awakened Swift Affliction, which unfortunately is like 4x, but that is going to get your damage up with your bleed dot. In the hands of the High Templar, we're running Flesh and Stone, which isn't yet fully level. Blood Rage, which we're going to self-cast. Enduring Cry, which we're going to have set to trigger when we move around. And Vitality, mainly just so that we have that little bit of life regeneration in the build. And lastly, which is one of our big defensive layers, is we're actually going to be running an Immortal Call, but we're going to be running a higher level Immortal Call. So basically how I stack this build's abilities defenses up is by having both max block and a leveled up Immortal Call. So when Immortal Call triggers, that triggers damage reduction, and also that feeds itself from the Enduring Cry endurance charges that we generate from having enemies in the vicinity. So basically when your block fails, Immortal Call will trigger, and because it's a higher level Immortal Call, it's going to defend you for a lot longer so that your block has the opportunity to kick back in. This is basically the best way to mitigate large boss damage and things like that. It's not an infallible system. It does fail from time to time because it is basically a random number generator. You don't know how much, or you don't know when block is going to fail. This is the best way that I found to mitigate the failure of block. But if you've got another route, then by all means. And this synergizes with our Adamant node, which also removes Corrupted Blood. So every time our Immortal Call triggers, it removes our Corrupted Blood. So from there, we'll also run Life Tap, because if we run it with mana, we're going to run out of mana. And basically, the way they changed jewels from triggering in the last league, that fucked us from using mana. Otherwise, we'd have increased duration. That'd be a lot better. And then after that, we'll have War Banner. Now, I don't have a Helm enchant. Any Helm enchant I would go for would be increased duration of, or any increased effect of Immortal Call. You could increase damage by having 40% increased Lacerate damage. Entirely up to you. Do you want damage or do you want survivability? That's really the question that you have to ask yourself. But that's basically the gem setup in a nutshell. But that'll be in the POB, which will be in the description. Okay, so for the tree, pretty simple stuff. Actually, this is where the big brain play comes in. So we're going to come down from the not Marauder, Duelist area. Basically pick up Art of the Gladiator. We'll come down, Crimson Dance. We want to stack blood. Bloodletting as well. We pick up this Hard Knocks node because we're pretty dopey. Then we'll pick up our Bannerman node and also 15% increased mana reservation efficiency. This is so we can run a shitload of auras. And then basically we will come back down here. We'll get Hatchet Master. This is going to give us Onslaught on kill. And also Axe Mastery, 30% increased damage while in Blood Stance. Bloody hell, I thought I was in D&D. And then we'll come up and we'll pick up this socket node here, and we're going to put a small Crimson Dual Thread of Hope. The reason why is we want to pick up Dirty Techniques, which is going to increase our dot. we want to pick up Defiance, which is going to increase our block. And we're also going to pick up Adamant. So then when we have Immortal Call drop, that basically eliminates our Corrupted Blood. You can also put like Steel Skin in the build somewhere in one of the areas of the if you've got a spare socket somewhere, and then basically just hit Steel Skin when you get Corrupted Blood on you, and that will eliminate any Corrupted Blood, because when you use a guard skill, it removes Corrupted Blood. This also extends the duration of our guard skills, because the way that the defensive layering works on this build is basically having your guard skills proc in between where your block fails, and that lasts long enough so that your block catches up. So we're basically juggling between max block and guard skills with this build. Then we'll come down and we'll pick up this large cluster node here, Now we want Fuel the Fight and Wound Aggravation, and Smite the Weak. I haven't yet got Smite the Weak into this build because I've got to get to level 94, and that's probably not going to happen. And then we also want Wound Aggravation and Rend. Now, in the tree that I've provided, I've actually put in a second set of these, an extra 4 nodes, to double that down and get it to 1.263 million DPS. Right now, this sits at like 1.1 million DPS. Then we'll come up, we'll pick up Call to Arms, we'll pick up Bloodless, Life Mastery, 10% increased maximum life. You'll come up, you'll pick up this shield node here, all of the nodes. This will increase your block and attack damage with a shield. This is also going to let you get 1% chance to block attack damage per 5% block on equipped shield. Then we'll come up, pick up Juggernaut. We're going to get 30% reduced extra damage from critical strikes. This will negate some of the damage when you do take hits. Then we'll come up, pick up our Axe Mastery nodes here, and we want Bleed You, inflict damage is 15% faster. And then Cleaving and also Slaughter. This is going to increase your attack speed, and it's going to increase your bleed damage as well. And also Intimidate enemies. Then we'll grab Savage Wounds. This is going to increase bleed effect again. We're going to get Barbarism. We'll come up and get Resolute Technique. Because we don't crit with this build, we just need to simply hit 100% of the time, and this is how we achieve that. You'll come up, pick Vanquisher, because we want to crush enemies. And when you crush enemies that are on full life, they take more bleed damage. Then you'll come up and you'll pick up Sanctuary and all the nodes in here, and we'll talk about this very shortly. Tireless, this is going to reduce the cost of your skills. And then we're going to pick up this dual socket here. Now, we actually want to put in a Blue Nightmare dual. The reason why we want Blue Nightmare is because we want to convert these nodes to have 2% spell block for every single one of these nodes, and then 4% spell block in addition on this node here. That's basically the effect of Blue Nightmare. This is what's going to get your spell block up to max block. So Blue Nightmare is a requirement. And also, we're going to run 2 Replica Reckless Defense duels. Now, if you Divine Orb these up, you can get spell block up to 4%, which is going to count for another 4% spell block, 4% for each of these, so 8% spell block on both of these Replica Reckless Defense duels, and these are about 20 to 40 chaos each, unfortunately. And then lastly, we're going to have a Watcher's Eye, which simply we're going to get an increased physical damage while using Pride node into there. You'll notice we don't have any Impale on the build because it's a bleed build. We're just stacking flat physical damage. Now, ascendancy wise, how to do ascendancies. The first thing you're going to stack will be Blood in the Eyes, Gratuitous Violence. You're then going to get Pain Forged, and then on your Uber Lab, you're going to get Arena Challenger, and this is going to give you Challenger charges, which it's going to skyrocket your attack damage and attack speed. But yeah, that's pretty much the tree setup. I'll put this in the description with the POB, and then you can go from there and do whatever you need to do with it. If you want to make tweaks and changes, by all means, go crazy. But yeah, there's a few critical unique duels that you will need, like the Blue Nightmare and also Reckless Defense, Replica Reckless Defense. Is this build viable at League Start? Less so, unless you're going to go the Spell Suppression route. It's not hardcore viable anymore. I wouldn't play this in hardcore. It's just way too risky. But yeah, this is how you get this going. Alright, so I hope I haven't blasted through this video too quickly. And I hope this helps you sort of, if you want to still play that crazy ass max block Lacerate Gladiator, by all means, this is the build for you. We've got an extension on the league, so you know, if you want to try something a little bit different, Melee is a bit fucked at the moment in Path of Exile, so this build is actually one of the stronger melee builds that I've played this league. Every other melee build has been just lackluster. They've just buffed up so much to do with Ignite mechanics, which I'm sure they'll nerf next league, that this is one of the few melee builds that actually work. Originally, this was a Flicker Strike character. That really didn't work. You're just better off playing an evasion-based character like a Raider to run Flicker Strike. I then tried Spectral Hammer, and while it's not Spectral Hammer, Spectral Helix, you really need to run that with an axe. You can't run that with a Terminus Est. You know, and this was the tankiest version of this character that I could build, even though it only has 4,500 HP, but it should get to 5k by the time, you know, like level 94. Anyway, if you like this video, drop a like on the video, sub to the channel. There'll be plenty more like this. It's a brand new year, so I'm sure that I will work through a shitload of new builds for us to play and have plenty more videos coming out into the future. Anyway, until next time, have a good one, and bye.